So yes, hi, I'm Karin. I'm a software engineer at Salesforce, where I've been doing front-end web development for about 2.5 years. So a lot of my day is definitely spent in the Chrome dev tools. So I just wanted to share some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that have really helped me get my job done on a day-to-day basis. So for those of you who aren't really familiar with what the Chrome dev tools are, it's sort of like an browser inbuilt IDE that allows you to explore everything that's on your page. So this is everything from the DOM to your source code to all the network requests that are going out, among a lot of other cool things. So I'm just going to jump straight into a demo. So this is a super simple web page that I have. It's just a bunch of inputs and some buttons, and it's sort of like a calculator, except instead of adding numbers, we're adding strings based on these different inputs. So for example, if I tick these two things and I hit this build query button, we get some output. Straight off the bat, it looks a little suspicious because we've hit NA here and EU, but we're seeing two NAs. So what I would do from here is I would open up the Chrome dev console, and you can either do that by doing Command-Shift-I, or what I personally usually end up doing is right-clicking and hitting inspect. So now that I have this open, I can use this nifty little tool and sort of explore all the different elements on my page. And so what I usually like to do is select the button that did the thing that looks incorrect. If we look down here, we can also see the console and some suspicious looking things, and you can actually just click straight on these things and it'll take you to that line of code, and you can just easily see what's happening. In case you have a lot of things, for example, there's just now a lot of noise because I've clicked the button a lot of times, you can actually filter this. And this is really helpful because you can just really filter by type or even by source file. So if you're working in a large code base, you probably have way more than just the one file, and you can see exactly where your console logs are coming from. But back to the bugs that we're trying to figure out. So in this case, we know, well, at least I know there's only one file, so it's definitely somewhere in this demo.html file. But if you're new to a team or you're new to the code, you might not know where to look to actually fix this bug. So what I like to do is I actually, again, like to go to the button. And I think a really easy way to figure out where the code is if you go over to this event listeners tab, you can actually see a whole list of all the event listeners on something. So in this case, I just have a simple click function, and I can jump straight to the code. And so then from here, what I would do is I would stick a breakpoint in, and you can do that just by clicking on the line number. You can also make this a conditional breakpoint. Other things you can do are adding logs. So if you don't have a console.log statement, but you want one, you can actually do that straight in the console here. So I'm going to go ahead and click this button. And now we can see that our debugger is paused. And from here, we have some pretty basic IDE functions. So I'm just going to go ahead and step into my code. And now we see a whole bunch of stuff appear. So these are all my variables in my local scope. This is pretty badly written code, so there's a lot of things here and they're pretty poorly named, but we'll just go with it. And yeah, you can also see the call stack. So again, this is really simple code, but if you're working in a more complex code base, this becomes really helpful because you can just jump around and it'll take you straight to that line of code and it'll open up the file so you know exactly where it is. So we're gonna just jump ahead, and now we're trying to like figure out why it says NA twice instead of the expected EU. So again, this is pretty trivial code. You could probably eyeball it, but you could also just step through it. And what I like to do personally is add these watch expressions. You can actually see the variables down here, but obviously there's a lot here and that can become pretty overwhelming. So if I know I'm looking for something in particular, I'll just go ahead and add it up here. So in this case, I want index list. There's also a console down here. So theoretically, you could type what you want to look at every time you step over a line of code, but that becomes pretty inconvenient if you're really stepping over a lot of code. You can also hover. So there's a lot of ways to view the same information, and there's definitely easier ways and harder ways, but there's a lot of ways. So this is sort of how I would begin to approach a bug if I had one, just looking at all these different things, looking at what's happening with variables, stepping through code, stepping through my call stack. So that's just sort of an introduction into what you can do there. One quick thing I want to show also is sort of how you can play with these DOM elements and style them straight in your browser. So from here, you can actually just drag and drop your elements in case you want to see what it looks like somewhere else. You can also pop over to styles and you can do CSS straight in there. So for example, if I want to change the color of the button, you can see here it's green now, and I can just sort of play around and it'll immediately update. And you can also just update classes or edit HTML. And there's really just a bunch of really powerful stuff you can do straight in the browser so that you don't have to keep going back and forth between your IDE and the browser. You can also force states. So this is helpful if there's something that's only happening when you're hovering. And there's just definitely a lot of really cool things to explore in the Chrome Dev Console, Dev Tools. So if you haven't already, I would highly encourage everyone to explore all the different tabs, all the different buttons. They also like to hide things in the little things. So just definitely look around. There's lots of neat things you can do. So hopefully that was a good introduction and you learned something and you've all been inspired to use the Chrome DevTools more. So if you have any questions, you can ping them in the Zoom chat or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Thanks.